The grand Wilcox mansion stood tall and proud, its lights twinkling like stars against the dark Los Angeles sky. Inside, laughter and music filled the air as guests sipped champagne and danced under the crystal chandeliers. Darian Wilcox, the master of the house, reveled in the attention. He wore a tailored suit that seemed to shimmer as he moved, a perfect match for the luxurious surroundings. "Did you see the new car I bought?" Darian boasted, his voice booming over the chatter. A group of friends leaned in, eager to hear more. "It's the fastest model they've ever made. I'll race it against anything in this city." His friends erupted in laughter, their approval feeding his ego. They nodded, their eyes wide with admiration, as they cheered him on. "You're unstoppable, Darian," one friend shouted, raising his glass in a toast. The atmosphere was electric, but outside the bubble of wealth and privilege, a different story unfolded. In a small apartment not far away, Clara Smith sat at a worn table, her hands trembling as she searched for job listings. She glanced at her son, Leo, who played quietly with a few broken toys. The fire had taken their home, leaving them in a world far removed from Darian's lavish life. As Clara flipped through the pages, her heart sank. "What am I going to do?" she whispered to herself, overwhelmed by the weight of her responsibility. She needed work, but every door seemed closed. The laughter of the partygoers echoed in her mind, a harsh reminder of the chasm between her struggles and their carefree lives. Back at the mansion, the laughter intensified when Darian recounted the tragic tale of the Smith family. "Can you believe they lost everything in a fire?" he chuckled, shaking his head. The crowd roared with laughter, their cruel amusement wrapping around them like a warm blanket. "I guess that's what happens when you can't keep up with the times." The laughter sent a chill through the room, but Darian remained oblivious to the shift in the atmosphere. He basked in the glow of his friends, their laughter a balm to his insecurities. Yet, a fleeting thought crossed his mind, a question that lingered uncomfortably. What happens when the laughter fades and reality sets in? As the night wore on, Darian continued to boast, but deep down, a small seed of doubt began to sprout. He pushed it aside, focusing on the thrill of the party, the clinking glasses, and the adoration of his friends. He had built a fortress of wealth and charm, and he refused to let anything shake its foundations. But outside, Clara's search continued, each rejection weighing heavily on her heart. She thought of her son, of the life she wanted to give him, and the dreams that now felt so far away. The contrast between her struggle and Darian's easy laughter grew sharper, a painful reminder of their divided worlds. In that moment, Clara resolved to fight for her family. She would not let despair consume her. "I'll find something," she promised Leo, her voice steady despite the tears that threatened to fall. "We will get through this together." Back at the mansion, Darian raised his glass, surrounded by friends who cheered him on. The laughter seemed endless, but a small crack had formed in his perfect facade. The world outside was fading, but a whisper of doubt echoed in his mind, hinting at a truth he was not yet ready to face. As the night deepened, the mansion pulsed with life, but an undercurrent of tension began to weave its way through the air. The laughter masked a growing unease, a sense that perhaps the walls of privilege could not shield him from the realities of life forever. What would happen when the party was over? What would happen when the laughter faded? In the soft glow of the Wilcox mansion, laughter echoed through the grand hall. It was a time when Darian felt untouchable, a king among his sycophantic friends. They all admired his wealth and status, hanging on his every word. He would boast about his latest acquisitions, the fastest cars, and the most luxurious vacations. But amidst the cheers and applause, a flash of memory reminded him of a different time. Not long ago, Darian had been at a party just like this one. He had stood in front of a crowd, full of confidence, sharing a story. "Can you believe it? I bought the last sports car in the city. It's a limited edition," he had exclaimed. The room erupted in laughter, but it was not just about the car. It was the way Darian laughed, carefree and unempathetic, as if nothing in the world could touch him. Meanwhile, outside the bubble of wealth, Clara woke up early each morning. She juggled 2 cleaning jobs and babysitting on weekends, all while caring for her young son, Leo. Clara was strong, determined to make life better for her little boy. Every day, she reminded herself, I have to keep going for Leo. Her resilience was a quiet power that most people overlooked. One afternoon, while Clara was scrubbing floors in a nearby mansion, she overheard whispers about Darian. "Did you hear what he said about the Smith family?" a woman remarked, her voice filled with disdain. Clara's heart sank as she listened. "He laughed at their loss. Can you believe that?" Clara felt anger rise within her. How could someone be so cruel? She had fought hard to keep her family afloat after losing their home in the fire. The thought of Darian laughing at her pain sent a chill down her spine. She turned to her friend, her voice shaking with disbelief. "He laughed? How can he be so heartless?" "Money makes people blind, Clara," her friend replied, shaking her head. "He doesn't understand what it's like to struggle." Meanwhile, Darian carried on with his life, unaware of the consequences of his actions. He would overhear whispered conversations about the Smiths, but he brushed them off. "It's not my problem," he would tell himself. He was too busy enjoying his lavish lifestyle to consider the pain of others. The laughter from his friends rang in his ears, drowning out any lingering sense of guilt. One evening, while he was hosting another extravagant party, Darian caught a glimpse of Clara through a window. She walked by with Leo, her son, holding his hand tightly. Clara looked tired, but there was a fire in her eyes. For a brief moment, Darian felt a strange tug at his heart. But as quickly as it came, he dismissed it. "Look at them," one of his friends snickered. "They're probably begging for scraps." The group laughed, and Darian joined in, letting the moment wash over him. He didn't want to think about Clara or the Smiths. Their struggles seemed far removed from his reality, a world he preferred not to enter. As days turned into weeks, Clara continued to fight. She took on more jobs, often exhausted but determined to make ends meet. Leo would watch her, and even at his young age, he understood the sacrifices she made. "Mom, why do you work so much?" he would ask, his voice filled with concern. "Because I love you, and I want to give you a better life," Clara would reply, forcing a smile despite her fatigue. Leo nodded, but he could see the weariness in her eyes. In the back of his mind, Darian occasionally recalled the laughter from the party, but he quickly pushed those thoughts aside. He was too caught up in his own world. He had everything he wanted, or so he thought. The whispers about the Smiths faded into the background, leaving him oblivious to the growing storm of consequences that would soon catch up with him. As the sun set over Los Angeles, the stark contrast between Darian's life and Clara's became more pronounced. He remained in his mansion, surrounded by opulence, while she fought to keep her family intact. Little did Darian know that the laughter he cherished would soon be overshadowed by a reality he could no longer ignore. As the storm raged over Los Angeles, the Wilcox mansion stood tall yet vulnerable. Thunder boomed, and rain lashed against the windows like a wild beast trying to break in. Inside, the opulent decor seemed to tremble, reflecting the chaos outside. Darian, who had always felt invincible in his wealth, could not shake the feeling that something was changing. "What a night!" he shouted over the howling wind, but his voice faltered as he noticed the chandelier swaying ominously above him. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed through the halls. He rushed to the window, peeking out to see the trees bending and breaking under the storm's fury. "This can't be happening," he muttered, a knot tightening in his stomach. Darian stepped outside, his heart racing. His gaze fell upon the garden, once a symbol of his wealth, now a scene of destruction. Flowers were uprooted, and debris littered the ground. "What will people say?" he thought, battling disbelief and anger. For the first time, he felt the weight of vulnerability, a feeling he had never known before. As he surveyed the damage, a familiar face approached through the rain. It was Clara, her hair soaked and her clothes clinging to her. Darian's heart sank. She looked weary and worn, yet there was a fire in her eyes. "Darian," she called, her voice rising above the storm. "I heard about the damage. I came to help." "Help?" he replied, incredulous. "Why would you want to help me, after everything?" Clara stepped closer, her expression fierce yet composed. "Because despite what you think, I'm not here to gloat. We are both facing storms, Darian. Yours just looks different." Darian's mind raced. He wanted to argue, to dismiss her words, but deep down, he knew she was right. The storm had stripped away his facade of invincibility, leaving him exposed and raw. "I don't need your pity, Clara," he said, though his voice lacked conviction. Clara crossed her arms, a gesture that spoke volumes. "This isn't pity. You've mocked my struggles, but now you see how life can change in an instant. We are not so different. I've lost my home too, in a different way." Darian shifted uncomfortably. The laughter that once filled his life now felt like a distant memory, tainted by the realization of his past arrogance. He looked into Clara's eyes, searching for a hint of the anger he expected to find, but instead, he saw something else: understanding. "I'm sorry," he finally admitted, surprising even himself. "I never thought about how my actions affected you and your family. I was blind." Clara softened, the tension easing between them. "We all have our storms to face. Maybe it's time you reached out to the community, to the people you once ridiculed. They can help you, just like you can help them." Darian felt a flicker of hope. "But what if they don't want my help? What if they still hate me for what I did?" "Then you show them you've changed," Clara replied firmly. "You can't undo the past, but you can start a new chapter. It's not about pride, it's about being human." The rain began to lighten, and Darian felt a shift within himself. Could he really face those he had once laughed at? The thought terrified him, yet it also sparked a new determination. "I'll try," he said, his voice steady. "I want to reach out. I want to make things right." Clara smiled, a hint of warmth breaking through the coldness of the storm. "That's a start, Darian. Sometimes it takes a storm to remind us of what truly matters." As they stood together, the last of the rain fell, washing away the remnants of the past. Darian felt a sense of clarity for the first time, realizing that his journey had just begun. He was no longer just a wealthy man, he was a man ready to learn, to grow, and to understand the true meaning of compassion. As the sun began to set over Los Angeles, casting long shadows across the streets, Darian found himself wandering through the once familiar neighborhood where the Smiths lived. The memory of their home, reduced to ashes, lingered in his mind. He felt a whirlwind of emotions: guilt, fear, and an urge to help. But pride held him back, whispering that asking for forgiveness was a weakness. Darian paused outside a small cafe, the smell of coffee wafting through the air. He spotted Clara inside, her hair pulled back in a tight bun, her eyes focused on a laptop, her fingers dancing across the keyboard. She looked tired, but determined. The sight pulled at Darian's heart. He remembered how he had laughed at her family's suffering, and the weight of that memory pressed down harder than any burden he had ever faced. Taking a deep breath, he pushed open the cafe door, the bell chiming softly as he entered. Clara looked up, her expression shifting from surprise to suspicion as she recognized him. "What do you want, Darian?" she asked, her voice steady but cold. I wanted to talk," Darian replied, his voice barely above a whisper. Clara's eyes narrowed. "Talk? After everything you said? You think you can just stroll in here and act like nothing happened?" Darian felt heat rise in his cheeks. He had been prepared for anger, but hearing her words stung more than he expected. "I know I was wrong. I was cruel. I didn't understand what you were going through. I just what?" Clara cut him off, her frustration rising. "You just laughed while my family lost everything. What do you want from me?" "I want to help," he said, the words spilling out before he could stop them. I want to make it right. I want to help you and Leo. Clara crossed her arms, skepticism etched on her face. And why should I believe you? You've done nothing but mock us. I know, Darian said, his voice filled with genuine remorse. But I've realized that my laughter was just a mask for my own insecurities. I thought I was better than everyone else. But now I see how wrong I was. Clara studied him for a long moment, her expression softening slightly. Why now? What changed? A wave of vulnerability washed over Darian. The storm, it hit me hard. I lost things too, but it was nothing compared to what you've endured. I've felt the weight of being vulnerable, and it scares me, but I want to help you. She hesitated, the tension in the air thick enough to cut. Helping us won't erase what you did, Darian. You can't just fix this with money or pity. I don't want to fix it with money, he replied, shaking his head. I want to help rebuild. I want to be there for you and Leo. I want to show you that I'm more than just my past. Clara watched him closely, searching for any trace of insincerity. What if I say no? Then I'll understand, he said, his voice firm but gentle. But I have to try. I can't just walk away and pretend it didn't happen. For a moment, silence enveloped them, broken only by the sound of the cafe around them. Clara's resolve began to waver. If you really want to help, I guess we could use someone to organize things, but it won't be easy. Darian felt a spark of hope. I'm ready for that. I'll do whatever it takes, Clara. Just give me a chance. She sighed, the weight of her decision heavy in the air. Fine. But just know, it's not going to be a smooth ride. Trust takes time. I understand, he said, a small smile creeping onto his face. I'm willing to earn it. As they spoke, Darian felt a shift within himself. The walls he had built around his heart began to crumble. He realized that helping the Smiths might not only redeem him, it could lead to something more meaningful. Let's start with a community meeting, Clara suggested, finally allowing a hint of hope to break through her tough exterior. We need to get people involved. I'll arrange it, Darian replied, determination flooding his voice. Thank you for giving me this chance, Clara. As they began to discuss plans, Darian felt lighter. He was no longer just a man hiding behind his wealth. He was taking a step towards responsibility, ready to face the consequences of his past actions and the challenges ahead. Darian stood at the edge of the park, a flyer clutched tightly in his hand. The sun hung low in the sky, casting a warm glow over the community. He had taken a leap, organizing a fundraiser to help the Smith family rebuild their lives. It was a surprising step for someone who had once laughed at their misfortune. As people began to gather, he felt a mix of excitement and nervousness. Hey, Darian, called out a voice. It was Leo, Clara's son, running toward him with a bright smile. The boy had grown more confident since Darian first met him. Are you really going to help us? Darian nodded, feeling a strange warmth spread through him. Yes, Leo, I want to make things right. Your mom and you deserve a fresh start. Leo looked up at him, his eyes wide with curiosity. Why did you change your mind? You used to think it was funny when we lost everything. Darian's heart sank a little. The boy's words hit hard, reminding him of the laughter that used to come so easily. I know, I was wrong, and I hurt your family. I want to show you that I can do better. As the sun began to set, the park filled with people. Neighbors and friends arrived, bringing food and supplies. Clara arrived, her face a mix of gratitude and wariness. You really did it, Darian, she said, her voice cautious. You brought everyone together. Darian smiled, but he could see the tension in her shoulders. I wanted to help. I hope this can make a difference for you and Leo. Clara hesitated, glancing at the crowd. It's just hard for me to trust you. After everything. I understand, Darian replied, his tone earnest. I cannot change the past, but I want to help shape a better future." As the fundraiser began, people shared stories and laughter. Darian watched Leo move among the guests, chatting with others and even helping to organize games. The boy had a way of bringing joy, and Darian felt a sense of pride in watching him thrive. "Darian!" Leo shouted, running up to him with a plate of cookies. "You have to try these. They are the best." Darian chuckled, taking a cookie and savoring the sweet taste. "You're right, Leo. They are amazing. You can be a great chef someday." "Maybe," Leo said, his eyes sparkling, "but I want to be like you, strong and brave." Darian felt a lump in his throat. "I'm not as strong as you think. I'm still learning, Leo. You are the brave one, facing all this with your mom." Clara approached, her expression softening as she heard their conversation. "Leo, sweetie, why don't you help me with these donations?" she suggested, guiding him away. Darian watched them go, feeling the weight of their past struggles and the hope for their future. As the evening wore on, Clara returned, a slight smile on her face. "Thank you for doing this, Darian. It means a lot to us." "I'm glad," he replied. "I want to do more. I want to help you rebuild, not just the house, but everything you lost." Clara's eyes searched his, and for a moment, Darian feared she would dismiss him again. Instead, she nodded slowly. "Okay, but it will take time for me to really trust you." "I understand. I will be here every step of the way," Darian promised, feeling a determination rising within him. The bond between them began to form, built on shared efforts and moments of vulnerability. As they worked through the night, Darian helped Clara sort through donations, listening to her stories about the challenges she faced. "Sometimes I feel like I'm drowning," Clara admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "But I push through for Leo." Darian felt a surge of respect for her resilience. "You're amazing, Clara. I can't imagine how hard it must be." "Thank you," she said, her tone softening. "Maybe you're not as bad as I thought." As the fundraiser came to a close, Darian felt a sense of accomplishment. They had raised enough money to start rebuilding the Smiths' home. The laughter that filled the park was different from before. It was a laughter born of hope and unity, not mockery. Standing together, Darian, Clara, and Leo shared a moment of quiet understanding. In that instant, they began to realize that they were no longer just a wealthy man and a struggling family. They were partners in a journey toward healing and redemption. The sun shone brightly over the newly rebuilt home of the Smith family. The house stood proudly, a testament to the hard work and effort of the community, and it was a place of hope. Darian, Clara, and Leo had come together to face their pasts and the challenges they had encountered along the way. As they stood outside the house, Clara looked at Darian. "I can't believe we did this," she said, a mix of disbelief and joy in her voice. "It feels like a dream." Darian nodded, feeling the weight of the moment. "It is amazing to see how much support we had. I never thought I could be part of something like this." His eyes scanned the yard, where neighbors and friends gathered, preparing for the small celebration they had planned. Leo, who was busy arranging chairs, chimed in. "You really helped a lot, Darian. I mean, without you, we wouldn't have this." His young face beamed with gratitude, making Darian feel a warmth he had not known before. As the celebration began, Darian found himself reflecting on his journey. He remembered the lavish parties, the laughter that came too easily, and how he had once looked down on others. Now, standing here, surrounded by people he had once ignored, he felt different. He felt a connection. During a quiet moment, Darian took Leo aside. "Can I tell you something?" he asked, his voice low enough so that only Leo could hear. "Of course," Leo replied, his eyes wide with curiosity. "I used to think that having money made me better than others, but now I see I was wrong. I was just scared. Scared of showing who I really was. I thought if I kept laughing and acting tough, I would stay safe." Darian felt a knot in his stomach as he spoke, the words heavy with truth. Leo looked thoughtful. It's okay to be scared. Everyone is sometimes, even my mom. But you did something brave by helping us. That means you're not scared anymore. Darian smiled at the boy's wisdom. Thanks, Leo. That means a lot to me. The connection they shared made him feel lighter, as if a burden had been lifted. As the crowd gathered to celebrate, Clara stood up to say a few words. I want to thank everyone for being here. This house is not just a building, it's a home because of all of you. We couldn't have done it without the support of our friends and neighbors. The crowd erupted in applause. Darian felt a swell of pride and happiness. He realized that this moment was more than just a celebration of a house. It was a celebration of community, of people coming together to help one another. After Clara finished her speech, Darian approached her. You were amazing, he said, sincerity in his voice. You are so strong. I admire that about you. Clara smiled, but there was a hint of hesitation in her eyes. I'm just doing what I have to do for Leo, but I appreciate your help, Darian. It has changed things for us. The day continued with laughter, food, and stories shared among friends. Darian felt a sense of belonging he had never experienced before. He watched as Clara and Leo interacted with their neighbors, sharing smiles and warmth. It filled him with a joy he had long sought. As the sun began to set, casting a golden hue over the gathering, Darian took a moment to step back and look at the scene before him. Children played in the yard, adults chatted and laughed, and Clara and Leo were at the center of it all, glowing with happiness. In that moment, he realized what true wealth meant. It was not about money or status, but about connections, love, and compassion. The laughter that once felt empty now echoed with sincerity. Darian's heart swelled with a new purpose. He knew that he wanted to continue this journey, to be part of a community that cared for one another. As he looked at Clara and Leo, he felt a strong sense of belonging. He was no longer just a wealthy man. He was a friend, a neighbor, and someone who understood the importance of helping others. Here's to new beginnings, Darian said aloud, raising his glass, his voice filled with hope. May we always find strength in each other. The crowd cheered, and in that moment, they all felt the warmth of community, a powerful bond that would carry them forward. Share this story if you believe that community and compassion can transform lives. Leave a comment about a time when support from others made a difference in your life, and subscribe for more inspiring stories like this one. Let's celebrate the power of connection together.